Greetings, YouTube viewers and fellow Final Fantasy fans. This is Final Fantasy Fan 012, and welcome to episode 5 of Comic Studies. And in this episode, we are doing our final story for Justice League, the world's greatest superheroes. This time covering Justice League Secret Origins and Justice League Liberty and Justice. I am joined here today with two of my colleagues from the UN Space Seat, being Leia Plus Size.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Final Stream here.
And Dominic Powell.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us in Finals live stream as we're going to be talking about the final entry of Paul Dini and Alex Ross's series. Hope you enjoy the ride.
Yeah, and it's going to be quite the ride here. Quite the ride in this one. This one, even though I honestly would have... You want to know what's the funny thing about this book, really? The funny thing is, I really wish there could have been at least some more stories about each of them, because we only got the 4 of them, which we did cover on the show. We only got one for the Trinity. We especially got one for Captain Marvel, Billy Batson. But then, I really wish we could have had more of this. Like, we could have had, like, one story regarding about Green Lantern. We could have had one story regarding about the Flash. We could have had one about Aquaman or anyone else in Justice League of America. We could have had one story for the original 7 of this, and then we get to the main events of this book. But then we do get some of them. A lot of them do show up here, except for one of them, strangely enough, because I'm honestly not really sure why, but one of them apparently does not appear. He's not even in this thumbnail, despite being a part of this team. But so yeah, but this is the story to wrap things up of this book, to sell this with the collection. So then I haven't heard as much background with this part of the story, but as we're about to see here, this is going to be quite the ride. So strap yourselves in as we begin our final story. So we begin with Justice League Secret Origins, and right off the bat, we're being introduced to the Justice League right out of the gate. By a lot of people being in danger with one thing, but yet there are actually people talking about how they're actually saved by something like some sort of miracle, like people being in the water, and yet there's sharks actually coming their way, but then the sharks are actually just now going away as if someone's talking to them, because we actually see in Aquaman's perspective that he's already telling them to get away. Or another scene where a group of civilians were in an alley, they were scared by something that even scared they were being mugged by criminals, and they were being scared away. That pretty much scared them too, which that's actually Batman's silhouette, and the criminals were subdued. Or the Flash at a store, who's actually at a clothing store, actually saved a woman from being held hostage by a mugger, and he actually just knocks him out. Or Green Lantern building a bridge with a construct, or Superman saving a collapsing construction site, or the Martian Manhunter getting an iceberg and putting out a wildfire, or Hawkman and Hawkgirl saving people from a house fire, Green Arrow taking out muggers in a bank. We're already seeing a lot. We're seeing the League's perspective, the entire city's perspective of the Justice League, of them being saved, almost like it's a miracle. And then we actually get into each individual members of the Justice League, which the first one being the Flash, which is told in the perspective of his girlfriend, Iris Allen. And it already explains his origins. Like, he always wasn't always that way. He's always was not the Scarlet Speedster. Where it actually says this: you may know him as a Scarlet Speedster called the Flash, but to me, Barry Allen was always a career slowpoke. Pragmatic and methodical, yes, but chronically late, much to the concentration of his long-suffering fiancée.
Consternation.
Oh, constant. Constant. Oh, yeah, you're right. I thought I'd said concentration. Oh, yes. I swear there were times I would have throttled that man if he ever bothered to show up on time, like on that stormy night. We had a date, but Barry let the hours slip away, of course. But he sat in the police lab working away on some bit of scientific minutia, obvious to the world around him, and then in one blinding flash, that same world became too fast for him. I don't have to draw you a picture. I'll just say that my man suddenly discovered he could make up for all that lost time. As a matter of fact, now he had to burn. Now he had time to burn. To his eyes, he was a normal man in a slow motion world. It was like he had less at the speed of Mercury. Though another legend fondly remembered from Barry's childhood pointed the way to the path he would take. Yes, to the world at large, the Flash is the fastest man alive, but when he's with me, Iris Allen, he still takes it slow. So not only we get Flash's origins, but we also get to where he got his name of the Flash, and that's actually from Jay Garrick, the Golden Age Flash. And then the next one we actually deal with is Green Lantern, specifically that of Hal Jordan. And in this one, it talks about the Green Lantern Corps, and this is in the perspective of Abin Sur, who gave his ring to Hal Jordan, and that's when he became Green Lantern. Famed throughout the universe are acts of heroism performed by the men and women chosen to bear this title. From thousands upon thousands of worlds, they have been summoned, dedicated souls possessing the deepest commitment to preserving peace and galactic justice. The Lantern's only weapons, rings of near limitless power that make the wearer's every command a reality. The Guardians of Oa, beings of vast intellect, bestowed this power to me and others chosen from every galaxy to serve them as members of the Green Lantern Corps. I lived by the oath I swore to uphold, a promise to shine my light against the dark, against evil. But the time came for me to seek a successor. My ring was drawn to a man from Earth whose spirit of adventure and quest for knowledge outstripped even my own. A man of tremendous conviction and a passion for justice. This last deed then would be my legacy. The most important mission I, Abin Sur, would ever complete. My last deed before dying to summon pilot Hal Jordan and bestow my ring upon the man who would one day become the greatest Green Lantern of all. And then the next story we deal with Aquaman, and we actually deal with his kingdom and his origins, about his birthright. And it's actually in the perspective of, I like to say that's actually Aqualad or maybe some other Atlantean. It said, because it says at the last line that is a legend of a child, which I originally assumed it was a son, but we only see him still as an infant in the story, so I assume it's still Aqualad, probably, like told in his perspective. And it says this: his name is Arthur. His title is King. You know him as Aquaman. The absolute ruler of 2/3 of the earth. His story began here with a lone woman of noble birth on a wave-tossed raft. A refugee from our world below. She was rescued by a lighthouse keeper. The wayward princess fell in love with her kindly savior, and he with her. This union of earth and sea produced a son, a special child who bridged the gap between those two worlds. In time, the boy's questing soul drove him to seek his mother's homeland, the undersea kingdom of Atlantis. Here, he grew into a hero and reclaimed the heritage that that was his birthright. So the broken circle was made whole again, as the new king began a dynasty of his own. Who am I? Simply a legend of a child, told by the people of Atlantis, echoed amongst its creators, and whispered in the waves of the eternal sea. Then the next story, we have our final member of the Big Seven, the original seven, this time, and this is the only in this entire story we're actually in the perspective of John Jones, the Martian Manhunter. This is a world of poetry and song, life and love, no more. The Mars I knew is a place as barren as it is lonely. Believing life still existed on Mars, the Earth scientist Dr. Saul Erdel strove to contact my world. In doing so, and in so doing, successfully brought to this planet the last living Martian, myself. I now gaze upon a new world so like my own, with equal potential for greatness or destruction. Dr. Erdel called me John Jones, a rough approximation of how he interpreted my native name. I further redefined it as John Jones, an ordinary name befitting an ordinary man. My Martian ability to shapeshift allowed me to blend among humans, reinforcing my desire to pass as one of them. Taking the role of a detective, I used my psychic powers to discover the truth behind seemingly insolvable crimes. When necessary, employed a more formidable appearance in order to startle and subdue the real culprits. Thus, in the manner of many immigrants before me, I found a way to assimilate into to the greater population. Yet my strange heritage ensures my isolation. Though I walk among you, I am always alone. The Martian Manhunter. With abilities beyond imagining, I fought to preserve the nobler aspirations of humankind, and in hope that my adopted home never suffers the same fate as my beloved Mars. Then eventually, we also get two stories with other two Justice League members, with having not only dealing with one hero but also two. This is one of them, as we deal with Oliver Queen, Green Arrow. And he actually says, he puts up in a more cocky manner, puts up in a bit of a more cockier manner as to this one, saying this. Yeah, I'll tell you a story. It begins with a well-heeled punk with too much money, no ambition, and the only direction in his life being the overside of his seagoing yacht. A couple days later, he washed up on the beach with the rest of the trash. One guy surviving on a deserted island by himself? Forget the movie. It wasn't that easy. This rich boy had a choice. Learn to use homemade weapons or starve. The Green Arrow. Going hungry wasn't an option. So I forced myself to master the bow and arrow. After weeks of practice, I was good, no exceptional. Before you call me conceited, let me assure you that going without for so long humbled me quite nicely. I only took what I needed and was grateful to have it. The experience opened my eyes when I finally made it home. I decided to use my skills and new attitude where they do the most good. I became a sort of urban Robin Hood, a self-appointed champion of the little guy. For a while, I had a partner, a good kid, talented, brave, and no stranger to adversity himself. He conquered his personal demons and moved on. So did I. And yeah, I did my time with the league, but ultimately, it was not the group that held my heart. That belonged to those people down there, the ones carrying on their own fights against injustice and the world that would cast them aside. It was a lonely it was a lonely vigil at first, but lucky for me, I met a pretty bird who felt the same way. Black Canary. What do, what do you know? Looks like the rich boy's finally got some direction in his life. Just never give me a reason to direct it at you. So, like, saying that he's no force to be reckoned with. And, oh, yeah, that kid that he did say is actually Speedy, Roy Harper. And then the other story dealing about two other people in one, this time dealing with Hawkman and Hawkgirl. And actually saying this, and actually says their origins of their world before going into our world. Thanagar, a scientifically advanced world patrolled by winged peacekeepers called Hawkmen. My father, Paran Qatar, invented the technology that gave the hawks their wings. I, Qatar Hall, grew grew to become our world's most highly decorated officer. Then came a day when one of Thanagar's most notorious criminals fled to a world fled our world for Earth. We were quickly dispatched to make the capture. Myself and my wife, Officer Shiera Thal, upon completion of our mission, we decided to stay on Earth. Taking the names of Cater and Sierra Hall, we secured positions as curators at a large museum. Here, we studied Earth crime fighting techniques and the mastery of ancient weapons, both of which would serve us in good ste- in good steed in good stead in good steed. Not sure how to actually say this. In good stead, as defenders of our adopted planet and its people. The skies of Earth are now protected by the watchful eyes of Hawkgirl and Hawkman. The next story, and then the next origin deals with Ray Palmer, the Atom, and how he developed his technology, his shrinking technology. Size matters? I don't think so. I prefer to say, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. It's a fitting motto for the man who named himself the Atom. Looking at me now, it's hard to believe I was once the tallest guy in class. Of course, that was before Professor Ray Palmer happened upon the remains of a falling star. A white dwarf star, to be exact, possessing incredible density and miraculous physical properties. I fashioned a lens from a fragment of a star, and through it, and through it, and through it focused beams of ultraviolet light. It caused an inanimate object to shrink to a fraction of its size. One drawback, one drawback, the shrinking process always destroyed the test subjects. A unique factor in my genetic makeup allowed me to survive the shifts in size and mass. I incorporated the dwarf star material into a special costume that enabled me to change at will. Only a small man to speak so only a small man, so to speak, would have kept this ability to himself. Therefore, I was determined to use my skills whenever they are needed. For example, I can write electronic impulses through a phone wire into a criminal's lair. Thanks to the dwarf star density, I can command the strength of of a man many times my normal size. And shrinking even smaller, I can stride like a giant across innumerable subatomic galaxies. But my proudest achievements are those I have made as a member of a team of unique men and women who accepted me with equal stature. It just goes to show you never underestimate the little guy. And then we get one of the final stories about one individual character, and a pretty funny one too. And this is actually about Plastic Man this time. And rocketed to Earth when the planet of Plasticon exploded, a bouncing baby boy was adopted by a kindly rubber tree farmer and his wife. Nah, I'm just pulling your leg. And if you want to see something really freaky, you should try pulling mine. Hey, you gotta have some sense of humor, especially when you started life as a bottom of the barrel thug named Eel O'Brien. That's me there, the model citizen cracking the safe. The easy score of my gang, the easy score of my gang hang setup went south real fast. My pals ran out. My pals ran out on me, leaving me in a leaving me to limp away, hey, with a slug in my arm and a wound inflicted by a type of acid. That gunk really did give me a number on me, or that gunk really did a number on me. I was sick for days. Though a more accurate phrase might be laid up for a stretch. Man, I was grateful my face didn't stick that way. It's just when he's just like stretching his face that way when he's realizing about his powers. You know the rest test. Exposure to experimental chemicals, you know the rest. Exposure to experimental chemicals, radical physical changes, yada yada yada. Presto. Instant mega malleable superhero. But the biggest change was that I no longer needed money or power or all the petty things that seemed so important in just a few days before. I was still serious about one thing, using my abilities to atone for my past. As Eel O'Brien, I set up the same kind of rats who left me to die, then slipped into my alterable ego to take them down. After all, it ain't it ain't easy to get over on a guy who can be anything from a lady's vanity table on the very book you're reading right now. Ha! Made you look. And then it's Plastic Man. And then we get one more, and it's not actually now about an individual this time. This time it is the setup for the Justice League themselves. And we also do get each individual member of the Justice League with this page here. And it says this: The Flash, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, the Martian Manhunter. 5 heroes who banded together to battle a common threat from the stars. They were soon joined by Superman and Batman, and in time, an extended team of Earth's mightiest protectors was assembled. Each member brings to the group the deepest commitments to preserving justice and the rights and liberties of all mankind. Over the years, many heroes have fought alongside the League, adding their unique abilities and powers to the cause. The Earthborn space adventurer Adam Strange, Zatanna, mistress of magic and defender against the dark arts, Metamorpho, the ever-changing element man, the stretchable sleuth, the elongated man, the phantom stranger, enigmatic and all-knowing, at one with the cosmos but forever alone, and Earth's air elemental contained in an android form, Red Tornado. Together, they have vowed not to control humanity, but to combat the forces that threaten it. As their satellite monitors events on Earth, they stand ready to act whenever danger appears. Guardians, warriors, the greatest champions the world has ever known, the Justice League of America. And now we begin the story proper of Justice League, Liberty, and Justice. Also, just to greet William Silva here. How you doing? All right, so now we finally get to Liberty and Justice proper. So then, I actually like this part here, this page. It actually shows every one of the members of the Justice League of America on this part here. And once again, I did say at the beginning there's actually one missing in the Justice League of America, and that being Adam Strange. Even though he's already mentioned in this part of the story with Justice League Secret Origins, when they're talking about the rest of the other members of the Justice League, he's apparently never shown in this picture. He's not even in the thumbnail that's on this stream, apparently, despite being a part of the team. And so, actually, before I actually begin the story proper, any of you want to say anything about first before we get into the story proper?
Who did the artwork for the story?
Alex Ross.
Oh, okay. I was wondering because I like the artwork for the Justice League. I was curious.
Absolutely, yeah. The Norman Rockwell style of painting that he does.
Yeah, I like the artwork. Again, I'm gonna let you get started, but I'll comment on later. I'm like, why were not these stories turned into screenplays?
Exactly, yeah.
That is here.
I forgot what I was about to say about this.
Everything they need is right there, just in these little 30 minutes that you've been reading this part of this. I did not read all of this final so forgive me.
Right.
But
we got a new guest coming in. Wolfton Media. How you doing, Wolf?
Hey there, Wolf.
Yo.
Welcome, Commander.
Good to be here.
Oh, now I remember what I was about to say. Yeah, just from that art style alone, you cannot help but admire Alex Ross's artwork. It is so amazing. It is absolutely amazing.
Oh, I agree. I do like his artwork for the stories.
And he couldn't just do stories for that forever, even though he could, because he is a good storyteller. Problem is, if we're gonna try to do a comic series of that, it would take forever to do due to how much time he would actually take in order to do this. And that's why they commonly try to get Alex Ross to get him to do covers from then on. After all this, after they know how much time and process that he would do for these paintings that he would do, for whether Marvel or DC. So now we begin the story proper of Justice League, Liberty, and Justice. We start off with a plane crash, and this story is told entirely in the perspective of the Martian Manhunter, given that he is the heart of the Justice League. So it's always told from his perspective. The Justice League has always been like his place, his new home, his new people that he could talk to, other people he could actually consider him, that he can actually consider friends, especially everyone else in the team after losing his home. So he's pretty much like the heart and soul of the entire Justice League. So this is why it's all told in his perspective. So then we only just see a silhouette of a plane crashing that's already on fire because an engine is on fire, and we see hands grabbing the plane trying to land it safely, and we think it's Superman, but then a few pages later we actually see that it's actually the Martian Manhunter instead of Superman. But then in the meantime, we also do see other Justice League members going around actually fighting crime now, like the Flash, subduing all the muggers in the bank by first getting rid of their guns and then getting the muggers out of there so that people would be safe. Then he turns them into the police, or Green Lantern, actually. And then this page of Green Lantern, it is absolutely amazing.
Wow, that is.
To even actually sailors there using a harpoon gun that's about to shoot some whales, but then Aquaman catches it and said that no, these are a part of my kingdom. I am not allowing you to let you do this. So then he tries to get them out there just to scare them away for doing this. And now we see the plane that's being landed safely by Martian Manhunter, and he's later met by Wonder Woman. And she tells him about the news that there's actually something big that's coming up, and there's actually saying, and she's saying that they need the League in order to get to the Pentagon, and so then he sends a mind link to the League if they can actually get to the Pentagon, and so then we see most of them that can actually make it, but some of them that couldn't. Like some of them that can make it, but some of them that can't because either because they have work or because they're putting their family above all else, like Aquaman, as we see him just actually trying to take care of his son. And then, but then we also see Batman getting ready to suit up, and we will see him a bit shortly. But then we actually see the actual members, the first few members of the Justice League at the Pentagon. Hal Jordan, Barry Allen, John Jones, and Diana, the original members of the Justice League of their first appearance before Batman and Superman came into the picture. Except for Aquaman, apparently, because he was part of that too. Funny enough, he was actually the first member of the Justice League. Very first. And so then they go to the Pentagon and they see that there seems to be this unnatural virus right in the coast of Africa, right at Africa, and it's an unnatural virus because it is spreading fast, and they begin to realize that it's beginning to spread, and they begin to think about what's going on and how they're going to do with this, and then suddenly, John telepathically senses that Batman is here in the shadows, and he's nowhere to be seen, and he somehow got pass through the Pentagon, through the locks and all the security, because of course he would. So then it is telepathically linked, so we're not hearing any thought bubbles. We don't have any thought bubbles with this as we normally do to actual speech bubbles, but it's instead in normal text where it's slightly slanted text, but in different colors. The white texts are actually Jean's words, Martian Manhunter's words, and the yellow text being Batman's words. And if you remember back when I said that that there are government officials that are not as trustworthy back in the Superman episode of Superman Peace on Earth, and then I mentioned that with Martian Manhunter's mental conversation with Batman in this story, we actually see this here. And it actually says this. Oh, wait. Hold on, it actually starts here. Amazing, the most heavily fortified structure in the world. Amazing. The most heavily fortified structure in the world. And you sneak in undetected. It's a building. Few more locks, just a few guards. Can you tell if anyone in this room has something to hide? Always a suspicious one. You never know when the government is keeping more secrets than they're willing to share. I usually associate paranoid delusions with Green Arrow. Even the loose cannon hits targets now and then. What are you sensing, John? There is more here than we are seeing. There is fear and a growing sense of panic as the officials realize they are facing a weapon that they have no experience with and no power to control. I wish I could say I was picking up a fraction as of much concern for the stricken people. Any of that seems to have been drowned out by the worry of what will happen when the news breaks on a global scale. apparently other countries are already demanding a solution to frightening that frightening the way he can vanish from my sight and my mind so completely because Batman already just vanishes just like that because he's already and because of how much he's just trying to get out before he would get caught. So then now the Justice League devise a plan as to how they're going to do this. So then Wonder Woman then contacts Superman and Aquaman to help some of the members of the League should any of them be in danger because of this virus that's about to be spreading that's started at Africa, specifically Aquaman and Superman to call about this if they ever need any help. And then Green Lantern, Flash, and the Martian Manhunter go there to check it out. And then we hear some inner monologue from the Martian Manhunter, and specifically on how this is nothing like what they faced before. Not anything like Starro or the Legion of Doom or any of the other threats that they faced against. Because up to this point, this is something that is far beyond their control. Like, this is nothing that they've ever faced before. And so then, when Martian Manhunter reaches to Africa, he then sees the Flash there first, unsurprisingly, but this time in a hazmat suit because it is a virus. And he sees that there are people that are just laying there. They're not dead yet. They are unconscious. It's just that they're just currently sick because of this virus. And so then they're trying to figure out what's happening, and then Green Lantern then shows up. And then Green Lantern, he doesn't show up in a hazmat suit due to the energy that's going around him with the ring that's protecting him from this virus. And the Martian Manhunter is already protected from this due to, of course, the shape-shifting abilities granted. So then the Flash have to take care of himself, to shield himself from that virus is within a hazmat suit due to the virus that's spreading. And so then Lantern creates a construct to create a map and a satellite to find the exact portion of where this virus actually started, and then he actually gets a signal, then Flash goes to check it out. They actually go to check it out, and then Flash finds it, and it's a meteorite, and it's not actually no alien, and it's actually a meteorite, and a pretty small one. It's almost like this big, almost like as big as a human brain, pretty much. But even though it just made a huge crater, because it is of an alien origins, but it's not anything that they know. Because as soon as Green Lantern actually scans about its contents as to where it come from, the Guardians of Oa do have vast knowledge, but they don't even know anything about this. And then Wonder Woman gets in contact with them as about this virus that they just had. They tell about the news about the inhabitants that are infected by this virus. But then Batman also gets in contact with them. And then they try to explain the very frequency about this. And then Wonder Woman then devises a plan to actually try to find about people who can actually get samples of its continents, try to bring it to Batman, even though Batman's already straight on his way for this, but they're trying to get this, but they're going to get this to him, to Wayne Manor, to the Batcave, see if he can get any samples on this. So then Green Lantern creates a bubble for this to keep it protected so that everyone else will not get infected from this, because that's the cause of this virus. And then Flash goes to get there and fast. And so then suddenly, as he's running, they notice something about this virus that specifically Green Lantern and Martian notice, that all plant life and animal life seem to be just fine, but the humans are affected by this. They are completely vulnerable to this. And so then now Green Lantern he actually goes away to see if there's anyone else, to see if if the virus has spread to anywhere else aside from there. So then he goes to check it out. Then Martian goes to the unconscious inhabitants to make sure they're okay. But then he gets some inner monologue, and due to his appearance as a Martian, he knows his presence will not be as kindly. So then he takes on a more familiar look by going to the minds of one of them to take on a more familiar face to make sure that everything's going to be okay. So then, as he does, he then suddenly is realizing that it's already spreading, that the body, about the effects of the symptoms of this virus, which surprisingly, Barry is already suffering through this, because even though he's already protected from this, but that didn't help, because there's a hole in his suit that's already spreading on this, within the hazmat suit, that's already spread with the virus that's in there. So then he's already affected with this virus. And so then suddenly he's realizing he's slowing down. He's beginning to sweat. He's beginning to stiffen. And so then he begins to collapse. And he almost drowns in the water from this. But then suddenly, to make matters worse, Martian then looks up. And then he sees planes there. And they're about to launch. Looks like they're about to launch a nuke there because of this. Because of how much paranoia they're actually in. It's just like, oh, it's spreading fast. What are we going to do? Just kill it. Because we're seeing this paranoia of the public that's growing and growing and growing, and it's going to get worse as the story is going on. And so then Martian takes off the disguise, and then he goes back to his normal self as the Martian Manhunter, and he tries to get rid of the bombs off the missiles on the plane so that it would not be destroyed, and they tried to subdue it. And then suddenly, one of the missiles hits a house, which then causes a house fire, which there are actually inhabitants that are stuck within that house. And then he goes in there to try to get it out, despite being catched on fire, despite that it's on fire, which is one of his weaknesses, because that's even how he lost his planet. And so, as he tries to get them out of there, he then starts growing weakening because of the fire. And then suddenly, everything in the house starts to collapse. But just before that happens, luckily, Superman steps in to come and save him. And then he gets him out, and then as well as the inhabitants that he's saving. And then they go to destroy the planes to try to subdue them. And then they also take out the pilots to get them down to the ground safe and sound from this. And also, as the Flash was already drowning in the water, luckily Aquaman comes in to save him. And then Green Lantern comes in, and then just before the planes were about to crash, he then catches the planes in the net, and then he catches them up to speed on that the virus didn't affect anywhere else. So they should be good for now. But just before it does, actually, it gets to that later. But he lets them know that everywhere else is safe and sound. But so then Aquaman goes to tries to find someplace safe. He dropped the meteor in the water, which is still protected with the Green Lantern's construct in the bubble. So then the dolphins actually try to get that, and then Aquaman tries to get. So then they help Aquaman try to use that and get Barry to safety to a submarine, and just to get him to safety. But then suddenly, he's being affected by this virus too, because Barry also has it. And then we then go back to Green Lantern and Superman and Martian Manhunter. And then just before the virus even spreads, just in case, Green Lantern puts a protective dome around it just so that would not happen. And so then Martian and Superman begin to have this conversation. I sense your unease, but Lantern's plan to shield this area with will prevent any further infection to deter outside attacks. I'm afraid it's too little too late. I could see the alien germs in the air around us. They're replicating and dispersing at an astonishing speeds. Even with this area, uh, even this is the even with this area quarantined, we're still dealing with an epidemic in global proportions. As Clark Kent, I was monitoring the media's coverage of the outbreak, with the truth hard to come by. I saw rumor and misinformation starting to run wild. I sensed the same thing earlier at the Pentagon. As much as much as the government wanted the Justice League to rectify the situation, more than a few officials were starting to fear that outside sources had sparked the disaster. Specifically, us as strangers, you and I are aliens who have been adopted by this planet and spent years protecting it. Yet my powers and my appearance have always in, uh, engendered more paranoia in human minds than trust. I feel the same way, Jean. Powers always seem to intimidate, no matter how familiar the face or altruistic the intentions. The seri- as serious as our struggle with this virus is, our biggest battle may be against the public perception. So then this is already so then we already seeing this paranoia growing wide as he already said, public presses is going everywhere. It's spreading rampant. It's already going wild. And so then we then go back to Aquaman and the Flash and the submarine, and they're already being affected by this virus. And then, even then, they're actually being paranoid by this because of how much they have it, because this is actually from this alien virus. And then they're actually trying to get them out. And then then he asks, like, Aquaman says, "Who's out there?" And he's shouting, "Who's out there? Are my words not being heard?" So then he takes it upon himself to get it out. So then he busts through the wall and saying, "Are my words not being heard?" And then he's saying, "You need to leave." The people in the submarine are saying that you need to leave, and then he gladly obliges. And then suddenly, as he's leaving, Wonder Woman picks up the contacts from them, and then from the invisible jet, and then goes to get them out of there. And so then now we then see this entire media that's spreading everywhere about this plague. Superman is trying to play the diplomat of the people at Africa, take a more peaceful approach to this matter. And then Green Lantern, still with the protective dome around Africa where the meteor hit, he's even put the protective domes, the iron lungs, around the people to make sure they're actually protected, safe and sound. And then we cut back to the Batcave, where Aquaman and the Flash are actually in the hospital beds that are trying to being under the care of Wonder Woman and Batman, as Batman is trying to figure out the substances of this meteor. And then it says that the initial testings gives him the basics of this meteorite, which contains traces of sedifial elements, cobalt and nickel, among others. But yet, even though it's giving them cobalt and nickel because this is a meteorite, but yet it's not giving them any traces of how this virus is coming to affect. But luckily, he then calls in for help, and that's when he calls up the Atom to do this. And so then he puts him into a needle in order to actually get him inside to see about what are the side effects, what's actually causing the effects of the virus into Alan. But before all this happens, Alan then makes a call for Iris because he's unsure that if he's actually going to make it or not. But then he says that he's not going to be home for a while due to what's been going on. And then he also tells about Iris about the news coverage about all this that's happening. That's all misinformation because they've seen it all, of course, and so then tension starts to rise, specifically at Lantern's end, where now before they're already analyzing the virus, Lantern's already now more concerned how much power he'll have left in his ring. And he's saying they better come up with a cure and fast for this. And so then the Atom then comes in, is now inside of Alan's DNA, try to figure out the virus, and then he finds it, and then he actually sees how it's actually seeing, and it's not just one, but it is spreading throughout his body. And then he said that this is because this affects specifically humans and it doesn't attack animals and plant life as we've seen. There might be something that they might be getting somewhere in order to create a cure. Which
Boy, don't you be scratching your booty hole on the stream.
I'm not.
Oh,
I'm just
God.
sweating. Just sweating. It's hot up here. Will you shut up? Sweating. I'm muting
Is
you
it really
right
hot
now.
over there?
Yes, unfortunately, I'm muting you right now.
How
Actually,
hot?
I'm just sweating.
I was getting all sucked into the story. I was enjoying it, and Wolf just had to throw.
I looked on the screen. He just scratching his back, and I'm like, dang, what you reaching for?
I'm sweating.
I know. Poor you.
How hot
Is
was
it okay
is it
on
today?
your side?
I mean, it's not like extensively hot,
Okay.
You got the
Lucky
heater
you.
on?
huh?
You got the heater on? Is there a heater in your room?
I mean, my heater's on, but it only comes on like whenever my room starts growing cold.
Cool.
And so now they develop this cure, and so now they try to develop this cure. So now Adam tries to analyze this to the back computer, and now Batman actually has all the elements that he would need in order to create this, because of course he would. And so then, as they give him this cure, Alan is then right back up on his feet from this, and he's back to normal now. Then eventually they give this to Aquaman, and then they create more of this cure. So then Batman actually gives this cure that he gave to Alan to the Flash to create this cure, and then he considers it done, and of course he does. So then he goes there to go to Lantern and Martian, as well as Superman there. Actually, no, Lantern and Martian are just all there. And so then, as he's doing this, the public starts going wild. They're already starting to grow paranoid. Like, they're already throwing TVs, bricks at the screens, throwing bricks at TVs. They're robbing stores all around. People staying at home are already growing terrified of this. And then it's already everywhere that Batman's even seeing this on the Bat computer. And then it even says, it's disturbing to watch people given so predictably to lawlessness, because it is already growing everywhere. And then Superman comes in and then tries to give the reason with try to give people the reason to try to listen to this. But then Aquaman says, I hate to play the whole hostile surface dweller stereotype, but it doesn't seem like your people are in the mood to listen. Then they take it upon themselves to try to get them to calm down. And so then now Batman calls up everybody in the Justice League. And then, of course, did Wolf mute himself or did I do it?
I'm not sure.
I muted.
Oh, okay. I wanted to make sure. Okay, so now So now the Justice League are in the hands to try to take care of this chaos that's going on. So then Green Arrow and Black Canary are up to a roadhouse at a restaurant there. It's actually at a bar where the people there are already taking the women hostage there as like prisoners of war for this. So then Green Arrow and Black Canary subdue them by first unleashing tear gas on there, and then Black Canary uses her sonic scream to do this, and then Green Arrow then takes them out with a boxing glove arrow, and then as soon as all of them have been subdued, he then actually gives them a salute for this as soon as they actually leave. And then soon after, we'll see Hawkman and Hawkgirl take on this perspective. And then says this: as panic spreads from city to city, streets were soon swarming with rioters. Hawkman and Hawkgirl determined that if people were going to act like barbarians, then they'd be handled the same way. So then they'd be subdued into being caught in nets to do this. And so, or at least either caught in nets or actually try to use powerful winds from their wings to actually do this, to try to subdue them. And then they also they're on the roof side to try to watch over them like eagles. And then Zatanna, then we go back to the convenience store with Zatanna and tries to get them and tries to actually push them away with wind to try to get them out of the store. Plastic Man tries to clear the area with crowd control to try to get everything under control. Muggers in vans are actually in the van that's already been taken down, being tossed out to prison, to a police station by Captain Marvel. Red Tornado's doing the same way. Metamorpho and Elongated Man already dealing with the situation. And then the news is already spreading everywhere about the Justice League on why they're acting this way, that people are that why are they attacking the public on this matter when they're supposed to be helping people. And so then, now that everyone else has been given the cure, they now got to do something about this. And so then Alan and Hal come up with a plan. And they say this: how about this? I'll run in a wide circle to create a massive whirlwind, and then you use your ring to turn the dome into a giant space funnel. Okay, and the rising winds will blast the contaminated clouds through the funnel and back into space. Are you bashing this plan on any hard science or just wishful thinking? Pretty wishful thinking. Works for me. And so then, and now Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman deal with things on their ends in their own cities. And again, this shot where we just see the Trinity just coming down. Again, you just cannot help but admire Alex Ross's art. It is so amazing.
Indeed.
Yes, I like his work.
And then we first see Batman's side in Gotham, and we actually see that whenever something like this is about to come arise, some people will actually take advantage of this by giving them a false cure with this. And we see a nurse actually giving the cure to people, and it's actually Poison Ivy who's actually trying to do this. And then Batman subdues it by trying to scare the people away from this, and subdues the other criminals, and then subdues Ivy. And then we see things on Wonder Woman's end, and along with the Atom and Aquaman within the matter. So then Aquaman, we already see people going to an electronics store, rioting that, and then Aquaman destroys a fire hydrant to actually use water kinesis to use that to try to push people in one area. So then Wonder Woman uses the lasso of truth to round them all up, and then says this: "You've had your fun exploiting tonight's chaos for your own gain. Now you can all start acting like nice little boys. Drop your stolen goods and weapons to the ground. You know the difference between right and wrong. Or do I have to spell that out? You know the difference between right and wrong? Or do I have to spell it out for you?" And so then they actually drop everything. They actually do indeed actually go home. And then on Superman's side, we see a woman on top of a bridge that's about to fall off due to all this chaos that's about to fall off. And as soon as she does, when she's actually falling off, she's actually saved. Who else? Than Superman. And so then, now we see Flash and Lantern's plan come into full effect. That with Lantern creating a dome that's gonna go straight up into space, and then Flash creates a tornado from this, so that all of this would then be sucked into space, and it worked. And then the virus is actually cleared from that, so then they didn't even need to worry about it. So then the mission seems successful, but it's only going to take a pretty long while for it to heal. So then we then see Hawkman and Hawkgirl still watching over onto a city on a rooftop, and firefighters are putting out house fires from this after all this has happened. And then Captain Marvel tries to get the cars back together, or not try to fix them, but tries to get them back in line. Try to get them back in line to clean up the damage, to clean up the mess. Aquaman then comes home to Mura to see her again, see his son, and then Barry then comes home to Iris to see if she's doing okay, and luckily she's fine. And then suddenly we then see a worldwide audience at the center, the UN Center. I think it's at the UN Center, where we actually see the Justice League. We see Superman is giving a conference, and it says here, on the first subject of a so-called super plague, a thorough schematic of the alien virus has been sent on several independent research facilities. As you will in the provided transcripts, scientists corroborated our findings and have promised to testify the virulent and potently devastating nature of the organism. Those same doctors also stated that while the treatment of the virus was comparatively easy once its weakness had been discovered, there was no way a team of human scientists could have initially handled the germ without being infected. The organisms had proven to be toxic to human life. The fact that several leak members are somewhat more than human to give us the edge to beat it. As to the germ's origins, or the numbers of sentient races it may have devastated before landing on Earth, we can only guess. However, we promise that is the path of destruction. The path of destruction ends here. And now on to a more pressing matter, the question of the League's recent conduct. We recognize that the social balance we hold is a delicate one. Freedom and order and ideals are often in opposition. While trying to maintain one, the order may suffer. And yesterday, while trying to maintain both, we were forced to take extraordinary measures against ordinary people. Had there been any other option, we would have taken it. But we did what we felt was necessary to safeguard lives and property. We realize this has shaken the world's trust in us. We realize this has shaken the world's trust in us. Our powers and origins, many of them alien, have sparked rumors that we were trying to subjugate people in a time of rampant fear. Then there were no other explanations ready to calm the public. We apologize for the lack of direct communication at first. The true nature of the situation wasn't clear to us any more than it was to anyone else. All we knew was that we were faced with a global threat and had very little time to act. It was never our intention to take the advantage of on the on the confusion, provided misinformation, or hide the truth from. I'm sorry, I can no longer continue this deception. And then it's actually not Superman, as it reveals it's actually the Martian Manhunter. Please, if you will allow me to speak with my own words and in my own form. Many people are still recovering from this disaster. Superman is needed elsewhere. He asked me to speak in his he asked me to speak in his stead, but fearing your reaction, I adopted his likeliness as well. I confess some hesitation in addressing you at all. Superman and I have much in common. As aliens to this world and sole survivors of ours, with similar gifts that shine so brightly on this earth. And though I can assume any appearance, my true like my true likeness has often been hard for people to accept. My immigration to Earth and subsequent isolation among mankind has been difficult. Then came that day when I found others of uncommon backgrounds and abilities. We band together as one to preserve what life should be for all. For some are aliens like myself. Some have been blessed with powers that have been dedicated to the betterment of the world. Still, others have found a way to transform personal tragedy into a crusade for good. Yet from yet from our hearts, we are no different from most people. We are part of the workforce that makes up society, each of us having the same goals for a happy life, free from worry. No one in our company has ever aspired the world to conquer, and if our actions yesterday gave rise to that fear, know that none among you was more worried about that perception than we are. Our greatest powers comes from the belief in us as our allies and friends. We cherish your trust and hope you will always find us worthy of it. That trust will allow us to perceive liberty for all people and bring justice to those who would deny it. My partners symbolize salvation. My, pl- my partners symbolize the salvation my planet never received. Please accept us as part of your world, not apart from. Please accept us as part of your world, not apart from you. And then we see, and then we see everyone, Superman and Martian Manhunter. They take this alien rock that's been causing this virus, and then they actually take it to space. And then Superman destroys it with heat vision, and then says this. The final narration from The Martian says this: the members of the United Nations were, for the most part, very tolerant. In some cases, quite appreciative of our efforts. Quite appreciative of our efforts. The Pentagon also spoke on the League's behalf, saying that we had acted at their behest, and the United States would would spearhead any relief efforts. Later, my teammates and I would return to the site above the Mentor's landing for one final errand. The League decided that keeping an active sample of the plague could create problems in the future, or as Batman bluntly stated, just saying none of us wants to conquer the world won't stop some other idiot from trying. At any rate, the germ's destruction meant one less threat to humankind and to the planet many of us had come to embrace. It is a planet It is a planet my friends and I have made to stride like giants, but still gaze gaze at it, gaze at with all the wonder of a child. Once again, I wish I could let everyone on Earth see their beautiful world through my eyes, and perhaps one day they will. And thus ends this anthology of Justice League, the world's greatest superheroes. And what a ride that was! What did you guys think?
Pretty good.
I
All things
agree.
considered, very dire, but at the same time, just really has a big emphasis on character motivation and really discussions on how chaos can run amok and how people try to fight for control or try to fight to really be the light in the darkness.
Yeah, exactly. Or
You
as
know, you,
basically
you even
as
had you even have John Jones being the beacon of hope in disguise, despite the fact that he's not he's very uncomfortable being deceitful in a
yeah,
way.
despite of being not human.
That too. There's also the case of the whole aliens being adopted into a world not of their own, despite losing their old homes.
Yeah.
Refugees, as see they you know how a lot of people like to call them immigrants. They're not immigrants. They're refugees.
Yes.
Is that what you're calling most refugees now, or the blanket term immigrant?
I mean, they've been sent there for a
There's a
reason.
difference. There's a
Mhm.
difference.
Actually,
And it clearly shows, like from John Jones to Hawkman and Hawkgirl, and even Superman. That inspired coming from different worlds. Like they'll do everything they can to protect their adopted world from the forces of evil.
exactly. Yeah, they've been sent there with reason.
Yeah, and also what I'm impressed with is even though, like at the time in the making of this series with Paul Dini and Alex Ross, that Carter and Shayura's origins are based more on their current like Hawk World New Earth origins. They're the original being the reincarnations of Prince Khufu and Princess Shayura from Egypt. You know, due to making contact with being stabbed with an nth metal dagger.
Yeah.
Or like this origin that Paul Dini and Alex Ross decided to use for the two, like it is still like the heroic duo that we recognize, like even before or the original origins was restored later on down the line.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, in spite of like how their origins been handled by numerous writers before Jeff Johns came in and helped clear it all up, and then eventually Robert Venditti during DC Rebirth. This is still the Hawkman and Hawkgirl that we all know.
Yeah. We rarely ever see them now.
Yeah, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah. And the most unfortunate thing is, you want to know what's really unfortunate? I mentioned that Adam Strange has already been a part of the Justice League that we already shown here, but yet he's never seen in this thumbnail or even anywhere in the story, despite being mentioned that he's a part of the League.
I I think understandably he serves as as a cameo for the number of different heroes who over the decades have either official members of the Justice League or the reserve members.
Yeah.
So by having the origins of each respective member, like from like the founding seven to others, it's just going to show how big of an impact the Justice League has onto the DC universe. Whether it was the veteran heroes from the JSA who continues to train the next generation along with the League, or the younger generation of heroes who are inspired by the two disparate teams' actions.
Yeah.
I love and appreciate the talent artwork of Alex Ross, and his talented artwork shows the lack we're getting now in comics, because that artwork is stunning. Everything about it and the way all the heroes are drawn is just stunning, the way they should be drawn, and it just shows you what we're missing now. Wolf basically said the same thing I was going to say about Jean, that even though he is an alien or not from the planet, there is a sense of hope that he brings, that these stories should always have. That he's not here to warn your impending doom, humans. It's more about what we as humans should be. And that ingredient should always be in these stories. These stories are not just about, how strong the heroes are, or using their powers to defeat someone evil, or punching and fighting, whatever. Yes, that's a part of it, and that's fun, but there's also that element that he brings as well. So I was going to bring that. And then me, if I was an intelligent, smart head of Warner Brothers, again, this is the stories that should be told. These are good stories. The story is right there. But what I would do instead of a film, perhaps I would make this a streaming show, so that I could flesh out the story more and not worry much about connecting it. But I would say, okay, we're going to take this story and we're going to do a streaming series of it, so that we can flesh it out more and tell more. And the story shows there's more here than just heroes in their costumes. There is an actual story about us and people, and for everyone to enjoy
Yes.
going over this. And then that's why I always make the question, why is this not a motion picture? Why is this not a streaming series? The material is right there. Anyone who sits down and takes the time to read it can see it. And I also like how it goes over their origin stories. And I'm saying to myself, these origin stories are better than what they're doing with the films, because they're good stories. So there's no excuse not to tell these stories. Everything is right there. It's right there. Warner Brothers could be making a bundle, or really getting subscribers to their channel, if they just adapt it the way the book has been told. The costumes look great with the artwork, but there's a real story there. So anyone that says that these is just kiddie fairy tales is ridiculous, because you've got all that material right there. So like I said, if I was the head of the studios, I would say, hey, we're adapting this.
Yeah, because really there's already a lot of stories. As Vistrosa actually says in this chat, that there are a lot of DC characters that we rarely ever see. And there's a lot of DC stories that are often the most overlooked. Like what are the most common Batman stories that people always recommend? Like what are the most common Batman stories that people always say that you should read whenever talking about Batman?
Anything with the Joker?
Well,
Or I can't think at the moment. I know there's some at the top of my head.
Well, there's two. Either The Dark Knight Returns or Batman Year One.
Yes, exactly. Both of which are Frank Miller stories. And of which I'm not really much of a big fan of Frank Miller's Batman anyway, because A Long Halloween and The Dark Knight Returns. Yeah, they recommend A Long Halloween. Long Halloween is a pretty good Batman story, but even then, that wasn't much of like a big influence for the Batman. Not even Batman Ego is a big influence on that, because it's not really Batman, because they forgot about how much the literature influences of Batman's characters, specifically that of Sherlock Holmes and Zorro.
And there's also the Scarlet Pimpernel.
Are you talking it as far as influencing Batman?
Yes.
Or those what Mo could go into Batman? Yeah, I would agree with that. They're forgetting he is a detective. They're so forgetting that.
Yeah.
I do agree with that.
And they even forget about his influence. His influence of his character was also inspired by Zorro. Like the character who actually his hideout is actually an underground cave where he hides is actually a door on a grandfather clock. That's actually the influence to the Batcave, where it's actually at. In fact, the charming rich fellow, Don Diego de la Vega, that's actually Zorro, Bruce Wayne, Batman. And then suddenly, and then both of these figures, Zorro and Batman, fighting for people who cannot stand up for themselves.
Yes, that's the whole point that they're forgetting. As the professor says, they're trying to turn him into the Punisher or Death Wish. Charles Bronson and Death Wish. You youngins probably don't know this movie, but
I
back in
do.
the thanks. Okay, yeah, it seems like that's what they're trying to turn him into, Charles Bronson in the Death Wish movies, and that's not what Batman is. He is, as you said, one, he's part detective and part crusader to fight for those who can't fight for themselves. But they're misinterpreting or trying to turn him into what they see him as to what he is. And there's a detective element to it, like you said. There's a
Yes.
Zorro to it. There's that's what he should be, and that's the misinterpretation that we're getting. Is too many producers and writers or fans or whatever going into these things thinking he's a vigilante, and he's absolutely not, because he does not kill the villains. He turns them in to get a fair trial or treatment or whatever.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
In fact,
But well, one of the
um,
reasons why you have these misrepresentations of Bruce Wayne is either two factors. Either one like they learned a lot of lessons from Frank Miller, Neil Adams, and others before and after them, or or they they have they mischaracterize Bruce like whenever like they get a chance to write him is because like they want this goes to show what would happen if he has actually started to take a more lethal force direction with how he handles crime.
yeah, just like Jean-Paul Valley, Azrael, the original Azrael.
Yeah, yeah, like in the beginning, like John Palm Valley, he started off as being a puppet for the Order of Saint Dumas before Bruce and Tim like were able to save from being like Saint Dumas' puppet, and for a while like he started to get better, but then when nightfall happens and like Bruce like he fell into Bane's trap, which caused the iconic moment of his back being broken by Bane, and then he started being controlled by the system again, yeah, which caused him to become the Azrael Batman that people recognize him for.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then very true. And then I go back and say, these are I don't understand under the sun. This is the story they should be adapting. If they were adapting the story, the Justice story that you just read, final, the films would be a whole lot better. And that's what audiences want. What you just read is what audiences want. I mean, that's how I would interpret it.
Yeah.
I don't, if you film, or if I would do it, since they're looking for content, I would say we're going to take this story, and we're going to use it as a streaming series so we can flesh out all the characters in their own way, and then let leads up to uh, the situation with Superman, and then flesh out John more and make these characters real. These characters are more than just their costumes.
Yeah. They are
You've got to show.
humans. In spite of being
Yes,
aliens, and especially coming from other different worlds, like Wonder Woman being an ambassador from Themyscira, John Jones being a Martian from Mars. In fact, Hawkman and Hawkgirl, they're aliens themselves, believe it or not. Green Lantern, even though he is human, he also comes to an alien world that's actually designed to actually protect the galaxy, protect the universe. To even any of the mystics in the DC universe, like Zatanna or Doctor Fate, or to even other supernatural characters like the Phantom Stranger or the Spectre, they are
Or
humans.
or those all those who are born with superhuman abilities through the metagene, they're still human.
Yes,
the common factor or the common denominator that should be showed with the Justice League or anyone else is that yes, they're everything that you just said they are, either from another planet or endowed with powers, is first and
Or
foremost,
born with them.
or born with them. Yes, Dominic. Their job is to protect. That's their number one. They're not there to start a fight. They're there to protect from those who want to. And secondly, they in their own way become a family. There is a family element to Justice League. They may come from different worlds, different places, different situations, but they develop into a family, into a family unit. And when you have a whole family unit, you have the biggest strength of all, and that is what that's a factor that you also have to remember putting these stories together. So what I'm saying is that's what's missing now from films like these, that family element. Family doesn't necessarily mean the family that maybe
Well, the
you and I
human
are
element
from.
is even what they're missing.
Yeah, that as well. Yes, most importantly, that as well. Yep,
Yeah,
the human element.
because apparently, no, we're just gonna make.
Another
We're,
important.
mm? Oh, go ahead, Dom.
Well, I'm just going to say this real quick. Another important factor is they're not gods. No,
Yeah, exactly.
they never
They're
and
given.
they
They're given.
never developed the fact. They never even like thought of themselves as gods. No, they're just
Yeah,
extraordinary people with extraordinary skills and abilities.
yeah. Back when George Perez did the Marvel and DC crossover story, Marvel looked at DC's heroes as saying like, why did people worship you, like look at you as like gods? And then DC to Marvel's like, why is the public always against you so much? Because they are two different worlds. Two different worlds.
Yeah, because in DC, like besides the besides the major theme of legacy, they're larger than life, and are people with godly or like supernatural or enhanced abilities, but they're still human. Whereas in the Marvel universe, yes, it's grounded. However, the fantastical remains out there and emphasized.
Yes.
Again, there's no excuse for them not to tell these stories, except the fact they don't want to tell these stories. Because just by reading that alone, because critics say, oh, it's just, again, kitty fodder. I hate to sound like a broken record, but I just
Yeah.
don't think these stories are kitty fodder. I don't think they're kitty fairy tales. I think they are stories, mythologies for all of us to enjoy and all of us to learn from. And it shows that they're not these vigilantes coming to Earth to seek vengeance. There is a lesson to learn from here, and this is what, and I hope all you out there listening, I know I'm going to get hated, but this is what Zack Snyder didn't get.
Yeah. In fact, that's not even like the one aspect they would even get at all. Like they seem to have this they always have like a really immature idea of maturity. I know I've said this quite a lot, but that's basically what it is. It's they always had like the mentality of the Lost Boys in Neverland. They never seem to have the idea of growing up. Like they thought they did because they are grown-ups, but yet they never but yet that meant they just left their childish memories behind and just saying that was long ago, that's then now, that's already died. But yet they didn't even like remember that because they're already focused so much on the now instead of the back then as to what they were as to how they got there.
You talk it in the sense of the writers.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah,
Especially with artists generally.
the
Yeah.
writers.
Yeah, because the writers and most of the writers and illustrators of today, like have, and they not only have this immature idea of maturity, but they also want to portray themselves as pseudo intellectuals for thinking they understand like how these genres of fiction work.
Yeah, and
However,
being intelligent doesn't mean you know absolutely everything. Like
Oh,
literally everything in the world, I meant.
If you're so smart, why aren't you rich?
What he
bingo.
said. Yes.
yes, good question. Good
Like,
question.
Wolf, anything you want to say on this one? What we were just talking about?
Nothing really. You guys
Mm,
said hit all the good points,
yeah,
like you always do. That good stuff that you always do.
again, like I would say, this is what Snyder missed or didn't want to deal with, or maybe he just didn't believe in it at all when he was tapped to do Justice League, because this is the story that should have been told. He did not say
Snyder would
that.
have fit right in Image Works. Anything
Yeah,
from Image Comics. That's where
yeah,
he should have been.
and that's what they just
Mm-hmm.
keep doing. They just keep going with the image comics. Like that's why they always make Batman into like Spawn, apparently. Because they always make Batman like, oh, the oh so tormented soul from this. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
Batman's tormented, but he's not like, but he's not always so hung up on it. Like, yes, he's always alone because yes, his trauma is what drives him to be Batman. But yet, the what is always the light in his life now? I mean, he's always had Alfred and Commissioner Gordon to help him alongside, but who else is always the light to help elevate from this? Robin, Dick Grayson.
Yet even in the image, yet even in the early days of the Image Comics universe, including a Wildstorm, like there, you still have aspirational heroes which acts as a counterpoint to like the new extreme like heroes like during the Nickel Age of comic books, which also people call the Dark Age.
Yeah,
Hey, but however, however, like before even Kingdom Come, when we started to see the shift of the reconstruction storytelling, planned by reminding people that what we're seeing is not a portrayal of heroism. These are cathartic heroes or different phases of the anti-hero. And
yeah,
eventually, once we have what Astral City, Promethea, Alan Moore's run on Supreme when he was on Image Comics, and eventually Kingdom Come. It reminds people why these aspirational heroes will continue to live on, and should actually guide these new generation of heroes to how heroism is and what it is, what it always will be, and how person needs to recognize what it means to be a hero.
yeah, exactly. And just because, even though deconstruction may seem smart, but just because it is smart, it doesn't make you feel like don't go to don't try to think of smart things to say things that are smart just because you think you are smart. Like if that's actually what I'm trying to say, if I'm already getting my what I'm trying to say here, like just because it is smart, don't try to don't try to pull off like you feel like you're smart.
Furthermore, if you're breaking things down to its base elements to understand them, you need to put them back together through reconstruction and not leave them untangled.
Yes, exactly. And actually, that's actually a pretty good note to actually end on. Actually, because now I'm about to start wrapping it up now, because now I do like to thank you guys so much for coming here because this has been quite the wild ride for the story. But it is not over yet because we still got next week on April 6th. So I do like to thank you guys coming here. Thank you, Dom, Leia, and Wolf for coming on here.
No, it's a real
You're
pleasure.
welcome. It's always fun.
Problem.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Even though this has been a wild ride for the Justice League, but it's not over yet because we got another big story coming up. Because I do like to thank you guys so much for watching. If you like what you saw, click like and subscribe and share with your family and friends. And make sure you ring that notification bell. That way you get notified of our latest videos. And also, be sure you stay tuned on April 6th as we're about to cover Superman for All Seasons. I'm totally messing with you on that one. That's just my only April Fool's joke here. but on April 6th, I will cover that story, but not on April 6th. That will be in June. But on April 6th, it will actually be Kingdom Come. Be sure you stay tuned for that one. This one is going to be another wild ride. That's going to be another wild ride here. And once again, thank you guys so much for watching. This is Final Fantasy Fan 12 signing off. And remember, may the light forever shine upon us.